Hello guys, today our topic of discussion is endocrinology, in which we are going to discuss pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is basically a pea-sized gland weighing 0.5 grams. It is located in the sala turcica in the center of the brain, posterior inferior to the optic chiasm. Here you can see that it is the base of the skull, and this is the sala turcica where the pituitary gland lies. And it is posterior inferior to optic chiasm, which means here you can see that this is the optic chiasm where the optic nerves cross, and this is the hypothalamus, and this is the pituitary gland, which is posteriorly and inferiorly to the optic chiasm. Then basically pituitary gland has two lobes. Here you can see that this is the anterior lobe and this is the posterior lobe. The anterior lobe is has portal veins from arriving here from the hypothalamus, and it acts under the influence of hypothalamus. The hormones that our hypothalamus produces travel to the anterior pituitary gland via these portal veins and stimulates the release of pituitary gland hormones. The posterior pituitary gland is basically the storage site for hormones released by the hypothalamus. And it, as you can see here, that it directly receives the nerves arising from the hypothalamus. So it is also called neurohypophysis, whereas the anterior lobe is also called adenohypophysis. The hormones released by adenohypophysis are adrenocorticotropic hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, growth hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone, and prolactin. These hormones basically control four major basic hormone systems in the body, like adrenal gland, thyroid gland, growth, reproduction, and lactation. The neurohypophysis has a direct effect from the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus releases vasopressin and oxytocin, which are stored in the neurohypophysis. The vasopressin is basically responsible for homeostasis of water. That is, whenever the body is dehydrating, it starts reabsorption in the distal or collecting tubules of the kidney to reabsorb more water. And oxytocin, which is released especially during pregnancy and lactation to increase contraction. Increased contraction of lactating or mammary glands, and increased contraction of uterine glands during labor. The hormones that are released by the hypothalamus are thyrotropin releasing hormone, which acts on the thyroid stimulating hormone, the growth hormone, which acts on the growth hormone releasing hormone, which acts on the growth hormone, the corticotropin releasing hormone, which acts on the adrenocorticotropic hormone, the vasopressin, which is also called antidiuretic hormone, the oxytocin and gonadotropin releasing hormone, which acts on follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone. These hormones basically influences or stimulates the release of these TSH, GH, ACTH, and FSH or LH release from the anterior pituitary gland. Functions of hormones. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is stimulated by the corticotropin releasing hormone, is produced in biological stress. What it does is it basically stimulates the cortex of the adrenal gland, which to produce cortisol, which is a stress hormone which causes gluconeogenesis, lipolysis, proteolysis. basically what happens is during stress we need more and more energy, and for that we need more and more glucose. So our body with the help of cortisol it produces glucose by every means. That is, it directly produces glucose, and it increases breakdown of lipids to further increase production of glucose via different pathways, and similarly with proteolysis, that it increases protein breakdown to convert it into glucose. And it also maintains BP during stressful conditions. What is another remarkable function of cortisol is that it is responsible for reducing inflammation. That is why we use corticosteroids during inflammatory conditions to reduce inflammation. Deficiency of ACTH, basically when you think of when you do certain tests and you find out that there is deficiency of ACTH, then you must be thinking that there might be some problem with the pituitary gland. If there is problem within the pituitary gland, then it is the secondary adrenal insufficiency. But if the problem lies within the hypothalamus, then it is the tertiary adrenal insufficiency. What is happening when hypothalamus is involved is that it is not releasing corticotrophin releasing hormone, which causes the pituitary gland to release ACTH, which further causes the ACTH to act on the adrenal cortex and make the adrenal gland to release cortisol. So whenever there is a secondary insufficiency, then the disease lies within the pituitary gland, and whenever there is tertiary adrenal insufficiency, then disease lies in the hypothalamus. And whenever there is primary insufficiency, then the disease lies within the adrenal gland itself. This disease of adrenal insufficiency is known as Addison's disease. Thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone is stimulated by thyroid releasing hormone of hypothalamus. It stimulates the thyroid glands and increases the production of thyroxine and stimulates the production of thyroxine and triiodothyronine T4 and T3 respectively. What these hormones do is they stimulate or maintain or regulate the metabolism of almost every tissue of the body. So whenever these hormones are increased, the metabolic rate of the body is increased, and whenever these are decreased, the metabolic rate is decreased. So whenever there is insufficiency of this hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone or thyroid releasing hormone, then this leads to hypothyroidism, that is decreased metabolic rate. Then there comes the growth hormone, which is also called somatotrophin. It is stimulated by growth hormone releasing hormone. Its vital role is during the puberty and childhood, when it causes growth in children. Especially there is a growth spurt, that is a surge or peak of growth hormone release during puberty, which causes a sudden increase in growth of children. It stimulates the protein synthesis as required by the bone as required for bone and muscle growth, and it increases fat breakdown to provide the energy necessary for tissue growth. It has also an antagonizing action of insulin. What it does, it stimulates liver and other tissues to produce an insulin-like growth factor, which is called somatomedin, which can mimic the effect of insulin whenever it is present in high concentrations. Lack of growth hormone causes, especially during puberty, can lead to dwarfism. follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These are the hormones stimulated by growth hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone. What it does in female is that FSH causes release of FSH causes growth of ovarian follicle within the ovaries, and it also causes the follicles to release estrogen. Estrogen produces a negative feedback on pituitary gland that you are producing too much FSH and the work of FSH is done, so stop producing FSH and start releasing LH. So then when the ovarian follicle has grown to its maximum size, the estrogen produces a negative feedback on pituitary gland, which then starts releasing LH, which causes ovulation, that is release of the egg or ovum or ovarian follicle from the ovary. Here you can see that the FSH and LH are responsible for growth of ovarian follicle. They have merged their functions. I have told you in detail that they are responsible for growth of ovarian follicles, and then when their work is done, then comes the estrogen and progesterone, which causes endometrial changes and proliferative endometrium. So overall they are getting the female ready for ovulation, fertilization and pregnancy. What these hormones done in male is that LH causes Leydig cells. Here you can see that LH is acting on the Leydig cells of male testicles to produce testosterone, which acts on the Sertoli cells, which helps in the maturation of sperm. And the FSH also directly acts on Sertoli cells and causes release of an androgen binding protein, which is necessary for sustenance of the maturing sperm. And if these hormones are not produced in sufficient quantity, then it leads to infertility. Prolactin is basically the hormone which is produced during pregnancy and in lactating mothers. Otherwise, it is under the inhibitory effect of dopamine. It is so there is always low blood levels of prolactin in males and females. It is only increased in some abnormalities and physiologically during pregnancy and in lactating mothers. Its basic function is that it produces milk, and it also helps in breast development. It inhibits ovulation by decreasing LH and FSH. And in males, it basically increases LH sensitivity of Leydig cells, which were responsible for testosterone release. So indirectly, it is enhancing the release of testosterone by the Leydig cells. Okay, thank you.